My name is Brian Radakovic. I'm moderating today with the hydraulics unit. With us today we have Allison, Clear Program. She's going to discuss some stuff. Just a reminder that it's NC's policy to always have a mask on unless you're speaking. Make sure you signed up getting the PDHs, and they will be handed out at the end. Allison now.
You guys hear me okay? So I'm going to apologize really quick. I am not sick. I don't feel bad at all. I talked way too much yesterday. So I'm really excited to be face to face, and it's like, oh, I've got something I need to talk to that person about, and I've got something, and so it was like so much talking yesterday, and so I apologize. I'm going to try to project and get the information to you guys, but I want to say I am Allison Tamer. I'm the State Value Management Engineer with NCDOT. I oversee the Value Management Office, and our office is currently part of the construction unit. I want to share some of the information that we want to talk about today. I realized maybe, Brian's like, we need to wait for more people. I was like, we may not get more people. People are like, what is clear and what is post-construction or PCAs or whatever. So it's fine, it's recorded. You guys can watch it later, it's fine. But anyway, but I do want to tell you about CLEAR. I'm going to give you information about what CLEAR is, our program, how it relates to our post-construction assessments, and then we're going to go over some of the lessons learned and best practices that we gleaned from those. If you meant, like yesterday, if you were in the session, Ronnie referred to them as post-construction reviews, but that is what they are, the post-construction assessments. We started it last year, and we did, well, I'll get into all of that. So we go ahead and get started. So how many of you and maybe none of you, but how many of you listened to my presentation at the ACEC conference? Did anybody? Oh, that's fantastic. Because I was going to say, some of the slides are the same, but it is a different presentation, so I didn't want y'all to get up and walk out. So I want to start with, these are some commonly used acronyms that we use for our programs and for our office. So just, as we refer to them, I wanted you guys to go ahead and see those up front. Also wanted to tell you, we are a small group. We oversee 5 main programs, but then we also have multiple other sub-programs. We have 4 permanent employees, I guess, in our office, and then we also utilize multiple consultants. So there is always opportunity to work with us. There's additional opportunity to work with us in any of our programs. We do have a vacant position. If you're familiar with Claire Fullerton, if you guys know her, she used to be our CLEAR program manager. She has left the department. Last week was her last week, and we wish her all the best for great new adventures. But her position's actually posted now. If anybody's interested in it, I think it closes tomorrow. So this is what we do. This is our mission statement with value management. We want to add value into the department. We want to look at as many areas as we can, enhance project delivery at every phase of a project's life. We want to provide opportunities for cross-collaboration, and all of our programs work to bring innovation to NCDOT projects and engage every corner of the program. So it's not just, highways. Like, we also work with a lot of the multimodal. We work with ferry and all the different groups, so it's a lot of fun. If you aren't familiar, which I hope you are by now, this is the Project Delivery Network. Though our programs have been around since before integrated project delivery and the PDN were introduced, we have definitely developed some additional tools and information that is beneficial to the PDN users. So I shared, if you were part of the general session yesterday, you saw that I shared something about risk. I'll share, I think I have another slide, a little bit about risk in this too. But yes, so some of those tools were developed as part of PDN. You can find all of those tools, as I mentioned yesterday, you can find those tools linked. These are our boxes on the PDN. They're like a yellow, mustardy color. It's not really mustard, it's better than mustard color. And but you can click on those. We have just all of our programs listed through the different stages. Everything is linked. It's in the PDM. It's also, a lot of our programs are also as part of the project management guide, because a lot of what we do is what project managers are also responsible for. And so they all go back to our value management website. So let's jump into CLEAR. CLEAR stands for Communicate Lessons, Exchange Advice, Report. And CLEAR is an NCDOT Employee-Driven Knowledge Management, or KM program. KM programs have been a focus of FHWA since 2018. They've really been kicking up on that. Through the work that we've been doing with our CLEAR program, we have actually become a national leader across other other DOTs in knowledge management. Knowledge gathering and knowledge sharing are widely regarded as essential to the long-term viability of most contemporary organizations. So CLEAR is a tool for capturing lessons learned, collecting innovative ideas and solutions, and then sharing those across the department. So that is what CLEAR is about. So what does CLEAR do? CLEAR creates feedback loops, as we just mentioned, between our different units and our different modes, enhancing our communication. Communication was a huge topic yesterday, and CLEAR is a great way to help increase that communication. Everyday innovative solutions and ideas arise from our frontline employees. Most of the time, they don't share those, or if they share them, it's very localized. You know, you have a division employee, someone in maintenance even, and they have this great idea, and it just stays within that division. What we're hoping CLEAR will do is that idea can be shared within CLEAR, and then it's shared, in a portal, a database that can be searched and shared across the whole department. So then that great idea can turn into a wonderful idea, you know, that other divisions get to use. Especially if we're saving money, right? That's a big thing. So anyway, that's our whole hope, is that individual ideas and best practices can be shared and become institutional ideas. So employees with an NCDOT email address, so it could be embedded consultants, but NCDOT employees or embedded consultants, anybody with an NCDOT email address can submit lessons learned and best practices or request assistance in the CLEAR portal. So this is the page, this is what it looks like. One of the CLEAR innovation coordinators, as I kind of mentioned maintenance a second ago, we have innovation coordinators spread throughout the department. And one of our innovation coordinators is actually looking at a way to, reach our maintenance employees who don't have DOT emails. Because again, we want to reach all of our employees, and they have really great ideas. And so right now it is set up for just, DOT emails, and I have consultant access. I'll show you that in a second. But we certainly want to start working on reaching, our employees who don't. Here is our project knowledge sharing site, and this is where we just developed this just a few months ago, where our consultant partners and contractor partners can now also share lessons learned, best practices as you're working on projects, as you're seeing things, and you're like, man, this would be a really great idea, to share across the department, or something even that you want feedback on, basically, like, we think this would be a good idea at DOT, can you guys review this? And so you'll see that this is our website. You guys can share that. We're going to reference this project knowledge sharing site a lot, because on this site is the external partner facing site for us, basically for the submission into CLEAR, but it also is how you can get to our post-construction assessment information. But additionally, the internal partners, there's a link here as well. So there's multiple links in a lot of our different websites for internal, but this is certainly where you can get it for external. This is, again, this is an opportunity for you to share this information. And I'll tell you where these submittals go. So here's an example of the form. You may not be able to see it. I'm so sorry. I realize it's showing up kind of light on the screen. I have zoomed in to the front, but it's still kind of light, so I apologize for that. But basically, just walking through the form a little bit. The top information is required. It has an asterisk. But the reason it's required is because just in case we need to get more information from you. It will not be posted. If this lesson is accepted in our list, your name is not part of it. And like I said, it's just really for our office to be able to connect back with you and get more information if we need it. The next section is there's a place for you to describe the issue or the obstacle. So, if there's a lesson learned, then typically something went wrong, right? something didn't go as we wanted it to, and so now we've learned the lesson from that. And so this is an opportunity to describe, what didn't go as well as we thought it should. Or maybe it's an existing condition, like this is how we've been doing this, but, we have an idea for, another thing. The way the form, you'll notice the way the form is set up, it is a project, it has information for projects. So it, of course, could be part of design, it could be part of construction, but it does not, all of our ideas do not have to be project related. It's just part of it in case, because we can't make, a bazillion forms for every single situation. So it's just, that information's there. Again, the only stuff that is required on this form is your name and everything. So if there's places where you don't have information, you don't have to put that information in. So when it says location, division, you may not be in a division, that's fine. So scrolling down the form, zoomed into the bottom part of the form, is the solution. So like I said, you have a description of like your existing condition or what went wrong, and then you have a place to say, okay, this is how we think it can be better, or this is what we did, like this is our best practice that we put in place on our project or while we were designing, or whatever it is. To carry forward, this is what we want to see, DOT evaluate and see if we can make this kind of common practice. Like I said, there's the other blocks below. If you click on those check marks, they expand. And so you'll see that is there cost impact, is there a schedule impact, and then it gets into the project information. So again, if you don't have that information, you don't have to make those little check boxes. And it won't expand, it will stay closed. Okay. So the last part of the form is where you can select disciplines. So selecting the disciplines is who you want to review it. And again, I'll get into kind of a little bit of what's going to happen to this, but applicable disciplines, we have roadway. I mean, we basically have anything you can think of. We have construction, and we have roadway, we have utilities. We have a lot of different groups throughout the department. We even, like I said, have rail, and we have ferry, and we have, Office of Civil Rights. I mean, it's any kind of issues like that. You select the discipline. You can select multiple disciplines that you want to review it. And then you can select, there's a checkbox to open up next steps. This is your judgment call of you're thinking, okay, maybe this is going to result in the policy needs to be updated. Maybe there needs to be a spec change or a new special provision or special provision change. It could be a new product is needed to meet this need that we have in the department. It could be something that is just an idea that hasn't been implemented. There's nothing that's been done yet, but it's a great idea that you have, and so maybe we need to have research to develop it, or a Lean Six Sigma project, or maybe it's just any of those things. So you just check what you think. And other is always an option, right? And then you can say what you think the other is. And then there's also an opportunity for you to select if you want to be part of this development, part of the solution, part of this, working this out. So you can say no, and that's fine. We probably will contact you, just be like, are you sure? And then there's a place for you to upload information. So as much information, obviously, is better than little. So pictures, documents, anything that you have, plans or whatever it is, you can upload. The difference I want to say, so the internal form is very similar to this. It is a little different. And one of the main differences is just that when you're attaching your files, it'll be at the top of the form. So it'll be the first thing that you get to instead of at the bottom. But the rest of the form is very similar. Okay, so now we talked about submitting and how you can submit. So what happens to your submission? Like, why are you even submitting, right? You're like, why would I even do that? Why would I take the time? So what we hope you're submitting is a lesson learned and best practice. For internal partners, there's also a selection for a need assistance or solutions needed. So that's where you kind of just like, I have no idea, but this is what we've got. And just, you can submit that, and that's fine. So what happens is the form goes into our Clear portal. It's reviewed by our Value Management Office. We're the gatekeepers of the information. We review it just for completeness. We just want to make sure that it's understandable, that as much information as possible. Like I said, we might contact you again and say, could you get us a little bit more? And then we go over the applicable disciplines. We may say, oh, you know what? I think we need some more people, or we may say, this is great. And then we send that on. There's a workflow that sends out to our experts. And like I said, we have multiple disciplines. In each discipline, we have at least one expert, and they can have up to 3, sometimes there's 4 experts in that particular discipline. There's project manager 1 that has 4. And so, so what happens is it goes to those experts, and then they review it, and they look over your information, and they say, oh, okay, this is a really good idea. Like maybe we do need to make a guideline change, or maybe we do need to, get some more information even. Maybe we do need to, maybe we just need some more information on this, and maybe we need to collaborate, and we'll get to that in a second. And so what happens though, if it's good information and they think this is great, then they reply with those comments, and we accept it, and it goes into our accepted list. Sometimes the idea, the best practice that you submit, maybe they say it's not exactly what you maybe should have done. So here in our guidelines is the example of what you probably should have done. We provide a link to that, and we still put it in our accepted list because that's still part of the lesson learned, right? That's still part of our learning process, which is, hey, we tried this and it worked in this particular situation, but we also want to provide this link that says next time maybe you want to look at this information and here's contacts and all that stuff. So the accepted lessons list. Now, here's what I will say, and I apologize. If you are an external partner, you cannot get to our accepted lists yet. So you can submit, but you can't actually go into this accepted list. So if you are interested in that information, then my request to you would be to whoever you're working with within DOT, whoever your partner is, who's got your contract or whatever, maybe contact them and say, I'm interested in some information if there's any lessons learned related to this, because it is searchable on the site. And I will show you that and walk through, so zooming in again, because I know it's hard to see. So we have accepted lessons learned, we have accepted best practices, and then there's, at the bottom, you can search that. But first I'm going to show you, if you go into the accepted lessons learned list, it looks like this, and the accepted best practices looks the same. You can search by keyword, you can search, you can filter by applicable discipline. If you're just looking for information related to roadway, you can, filter to that. You can look at construction, lessons learned that have come in. Anything like that, you can certainly do. On the side over there, you'll note, on the other side, you can even do by division and other, there's a bunch of different ways that you can search this list to find information you're interested in. Now, if you go just to the search lessons learned and best practices link, it's going to look a little different. It's going to look like this. And so you can't do the filters and everything, but it's both lists combined. And so that's a helpful, way that we can do that. I don't know IT, but apparently this is the only way we can get this to do. So you can't filter and everything, but you still can search through your keyword. And so it'll go through each of them, looking if you click on that one. So as I mentioned, some of the ideas that you guys are submitting are, they're already implemented. It's already something that's been done. And so that's great. We have that on the accepted list, and that's wonderful. However, some of them are, hey, this is something we think would be a really great idea. So how do we get that implemented? How do we make that change? What needs to change? And so what we try to do, we've got a 5-step process, which is we identify what the idea is, what needs to change. We look at vetting it through the experts. They're looking at trends. Has it come up multiple times maybe on different projects? The evaluation is done by experts, as I mentioned, or a group of experts called a tag. And we have tags that are formed. They're technical advisory groups, and they're comprised of multiple disciplines. So for example, we have a tag that is construction and structures and geotech and hydro. And there's experts from each of those different groups, and they talk about, issues and things that come through clear that are related to all of them. Because if one of them changes a guideline, it's going to affect all of them. And so they all have this conversation together and review these together in meetings to make these decisions. So that happens. During the evaluation, we look at how the ideas can be applied. what are other states doing? Are there risks or obstacles? What's the overall impact? All of these are answers that are then reviewed by the Technical Coordination Committee, which that is made up of upper management, external partners. And then the TCC works with the TAG to develop the implementation plan and metrics and all of those things to measure if it's successful once we've implemented. So that's clear. And then part of clear, so we have, we've been doing a push, we rolled it out in 2020 during the pandemic. And it's, the hope is to get lessons learned and get information in, okay? And so part of that was last year's goal was post-construction assessments. And what we did, 16 post-construction assessments last year. What we did is we gathered in, designers who were part of the projects when they were in design. We brought in construction, division, and area, and we brought central, and then we brought in the contractors and even maintenance. And we had a meeting, we did most of them through Teams, or pretty much all of them, one of them was hybrid. We did them through Teams, and we just brought everybody to the table to have this discussion. So these projects are nearing the end of construction, if not completely finished. And so everybody comes to the table, we just have this discussion. It's not a finger pointing, it's not if y'all to design this better, then we wouldn't have these problems in construction. It's never ever that. It has not, none of them have been. But there's been an open conversation, open dialogue, open understanding. It is designers who were truly questioning, hey, we had these issues in design. How did that work out for you guys in construction? What were the issues there that you had? And it's just been a great learning opportunity. What we did is we captured all of those lessons learned and we put those into Clear. And so now they're working through the process into Clear. And so I'm going to share some of those with you. So what did we learn? So here's some pictures from some of them. I'm going to go through multiple projects and go through that. So we learned a lot. We had 330 unique people. So as I mentioned, we invited the people that were involved in the project, but then we also went through the different design groups, and we were like, hey, if you want to send people, even if they weren't involved in the project, they're welcome to come to these meetings to learn. I mean, this is what it's about, right? This is our communication. This is us learning and this knowledge sharing across the department. And so we did. We had 330 different people. Now, we had a lot of people who went to multiple ones, but 330 unique that were at the different 16. It's fantastic. And we have 150 unique lessons learned. So some of the lessons obviously came up in multiple projects. And so, so we didn't count those, but 100, they're still submitted, of course. But, but 150 unique. So it's fantastic. So anyway, so let's jump into some of them. Our first lesson learned I want to get to is with aesthetics. It comes from the Dillsboro Bridge project. They use shotcrete as an alternative to other MSE wall finishes. It was great in areas where access is limited to like precast panels and other wall materials. And so the thought here is if you have an aesthetic need, it's okay to think outside of the box and getting a different finish. Like a lot of times, obviously, your aesthetics are driven by your municipalities. And so it's understandable that they're going to want what they know. But it's still okay to have those conversations. And this is great, and we'll bring this up with Dillsboro again. But they did a great job of collaborating with their municipalities and having these conversations and saying, hey, on another project, we used this, and showed them what it looked like and how much easier and more cost effective it was. And so, the municipality agreed, and I think it looks great. It looks really natural, I guess is the thing. But it was easier to construct, and so a better, go. On the Ashboro bypass project, one of the lessons learned was, again, coordination early on in the activities related to the aesthetics, to understand and design the appropriate desired aesthetic. So this corridor, if you're not familiar, leads to the North Carolina Zoo. So the aesthetic that they wanted is they have the animal stamps. I don't know if you can see it, but there's an elephant there. And it's just, again, as a parent, I can't imagine, like we haven't been, but I can't wait to drive the corridor with my kids and let them pick out the animals, on the way to the zoo. What a great idea. But a lot of coordination to go into that because of, what exactly do they want, and how are we going to get that accomplished? So still on to aesthetics. From the Peace Street and Wade Avenue project, it's also a good consideration to maybe not add really large specialty items into the actual contract. Maybe it needs to be a consideration that the municipality does that work afterwards. This particular project was still awaiting final acceptance because of delays in trying to get materials because the municipality changed their mind. And so in construction, they're changing their mind. So of course that happens, but if the municipality had their own separate contract with that, it wouldn't have delayed our contract and our construction and our contractor who was already, thought they were doing something different. But it's beautiful, this metal fascia that they've done. And then I think even I don't know what this stuff is called, but the pretty thing on the outside. They changed it, the design, the different stuff that they wanted. And so, having a separate contract could have been, beneficial. But then from the Salem Parkway project, they did a lot of communication. They did a lot of collaboration. Really with their, everything, but certainly with their aesthetic features. They had, brick patterns and paint colors and so much that went into this, this project. And so those decisions were made by committees, and they met once a month. They reviewed timelines. And so keeping them, I think, in the loop and explaining how this really can delay situations, because obviously they closed the route, so they would not have wanted to delay the project more than possible. And so, it helps avoid those conversations, those confusions and those misunderstandings, is to keep that communication going. And so you can see, each of these different situations are a little different, and not every single one can be applied to all of your projects, right? Because every project is different, and every project is different sizes, and so it's just, there's a group of lessons learned now, though, that you can kind of go through and, okay, which one of these would be beneficial to apply to our project? Because, or it may not be any of these, and you've learned something new, and then you can share that with us. So moving into railroads, which is a big issue, I would say, can be in construction. One of the best practices that was gained from the I-85 widening project is certainly to engage railroad companies very early to review and approve plans, and then visit the site to determine if there's any conflicts. Especially when the bridges are going to carry the railroad traffic. So that's a big deal. And so having them to be on site and having them to review the plans and looking for those conflict points is really, it's not just, because sometimes I think we focus on rail is just their rail, it's just their corridor, it's just their structure, but there's other pieces of your project that can, be in conflict with that. And so having their buy-in is very helpful. Additionally, with the Peace Street and Wade Avenue project, inviting the railroad representatives from that line to the pre-bid meeting was beneficial to discuss the constructability, like we just mentioned, and the operations occurring in the right-of-way and around it. Another takeaway would be to, as much as possible, eliminate any of the railroad work from the critical path of the construction that you're doing. And then what we also learned from our PCAs is that DOT has been partnering with CSX and brainstorming ideas to schedule work that's continuous and not in short intervals during 12-hour work shifts. So they have 12-hour work shifts, and so trying to do as much work as possible within that instead of, hitting hot spots, making the use of the time that they can. So I mentioned our technical advisory groups. And how they're formed, and I mentioned one particular, there's a bunch of different ones. We have one with electric vehicles and just a bunch of different ones. But from our Surf City project, we learned that the fib girders had excessive camber issues, and I'm just going to say all this stuff. I'm not a structure person, I don't even know what these things are, but I'm just going to read my slide here. So the fib girders had excessive, and Aaron's in here, appreciate it. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Excessive camber issues, which is occurring on other projects as well. Recommendations developed during the assessment included looking at the design of the girder to try to prevent over camber, and also to look at the design of the bridge to accommodate when the girder has excessive camber. So there's a technical advisory group who's working on this. They're looking at this, they're bringing in and looking at other information, other projects to see if this is an issue. Our contractor that was in the actual PCA was mentioning how this was happening on another project. And so it's been beneficial again, because not only in these PCAs are we talking about the specific projects, but we have this experience of our contractors and our designers who have been working with North Carolina projects, other projects. And so they can also speak to other projects they're working on and any issues they're finding there that relate, which is really helpful and great feedback. Because our structures group, they didn't realize this was an issue. And so it's been helpful to have this being brought up. So when it comes to temporary bridges, we learned several different things. From the 87 bridges over Hall River and Mill Race, we learned that temporary bridge designs are reviewed by the structure management unit, but they also should be reviewed by other units on a case-by-case basis, and this, of course, may not be all the time, but certainly case-by-case basis, because there are project details for those temporary bridges that could affect what's going on. So, like for this particular project, the stream embankment stabilization needed to be considered. The temporary bridge washed because they were the embankment, the bank there just it washed away with heavy. It may have been something we could have avoided, and it may not have been. But bringing in your hydraulics and your geotech and your roadside environmental even to review this information and see if there could have been another opportunity is certainly a lesson learned and something to consider. The temporary bridge construction needs to consider the footprint and the stabilization needed to prevent that failure. And so the recommendations to route submittal of temporary bridge designs to other units is applicable, as well as structures. Additionally, representatives from these groups may want to be on site. And that's another part of it. So they may review the plans, but it's also very beneficial to actually be on site and see how they're launching this and how it's working, and try to correct any potential hazards that they can see at the time. But if they're not there, then they don't know. Another best practice with temporary bridges is the distance. So we learned from one of the projects, the bridges 149 and 150 over I-40, that certainly there should be a minimum of 10 feet between your temporary and your permanent structures. If you're designing this, make sure that there is at least that 10 feet buffer to minimize substructure interference. Because it may look great in the air, everything's fine, even in a smaller distance, but it's the substructure that is so much wider than what you've got in your bridge. So 10 feet is typically going to be the minimum that you would need to make sure those substructures are going to have enough distance so there's not interference between them. And then also I'll just note that this is something we can help with in our constructability reviews. As we're doing that, we can review this information and just kind of bring in contractors who will point that out and say, nope, we're going to need more room. One of the lessons we learned about special revisions is from the I-40 bridges over Berea Church Road. So they had, what they noticed is there was discrepancies between the special provisions and the plans. And so yes, there is opportunity within the PDN that has now been established to make sure that special provisions are being reviewed. So it could be at the CFI if they're available at that time, but certainly later in the process. And so that's just a lesson learned, just to make sure that those are being reviewed. It should hopefully also be captured, I would assume, during like QA/QC that's starting. I haven't read those checklists, so I don't really know. But another special provision that was included in Peace Street and Wade Avenue is they actually had a designated contractor team member that was the utility coordinator for that project. So obviously DOT has utility coordinators, but for this particular project, they wanted to have a special revision for an actual contractor utility coordinator to be on site. The lesson learned from that is that it needs to be specific in the special provision that this utility coordinator cannot be the project manager or have any other major roles as part of construction, because there was a little bit of conflict in that, and then not having time to do the utility coordination because they were trying to do the other jobs. So if it's going to be a designated utility coordinator, they need to make sure in the special provision that it is explicit to that. So one of the lessons we learned with waste and borrow is that from the US 221 project is to locate and purchase material and waste sites maybe prior to letting to avoid long hauls of materials and locating the sites last minute. It was an idea that came up in a PCA, but it's kind of really interesting because it came up in a PCA and just like a week before or a couple weeks before, it had been submitted by Division 14 as the same exact idea. So this is something that we're working with between these two divisions to see if this is something that we can work on for projects going forward. For haul and detour routes, on the Greenville Southwest Bypass project, there are some issues related to the haul routes. A recommendation came from that meeting that they should be identified in the contract and sent to the division, prior to the contract let, so that the division can conduct the weight limits and roadway constraints and estimate potential damage ahead of time. What happened is there was a lot of damage to these secondary roads as part of it being a haul route that they were not, it just wasn't weighted for it. And so just them having that identified ahead of time can help them, make sure if it needs to be, increased or if another route needs to be chosen, that's something they can work on. Or even add it to the contract, I suppose. So, like I said, I shared this yesterday, the risk assessment worksheet. So some of these ideas that we're talking about are certainly things that we can pick up, something that we can find out if we're doing a risk assessment. It's stuff that can be identified on the worksheet. And then part of the mitigation for that is, like we said, it's, go ahead and send this to the division so they can review this, or get with the DCE, get with the area construction, or let's have a constructability review that brings those people in as well as contractors. We'll get to that. So the benefit of a constructability review, we oversee the constructability review program. And again, Ronnie mentioned that apparently it's a focus. I didn't realize, but it's a focus this year, so we're going to really focus on it. But they're helpful during design because, like I said, we can bring in, there's formal ones where we can bring in contractors. We can bring in, obviously your division construction staff, area construction staff, all the designers. Everybody comes to the table and they're just looking over the plans and they're giving you those ideas of, okay, I wouldn't be able to construct this. So these things may need to be tweaked. Or it's sure, this is great, and we can do this and this and this. I was skeptical, I'll be honest, when I started to say, if you're getting competing contractors in a meeting, are they really going to be sharing their secrets and their ideas? And they really do. Now, you're going to have some that are, obviously going to share to a degree, but they all really do. It's very collaborative. It is really one of my favorite programs because you're bringing so much discussion and knowledge to the table for everybody to learn. So anyway, these are, and again, constructability reviews are in the PDN as well as an option. They could be less formal, like an informal one could just be having like a quick meeting, maybe with your internal, your area construction, your DCE, your area bridge, and just having, just a quick meeting where they're just kind of looking over it, kind of providing some feedback. And we highly recommend that, of course, for any of those. But we can also bring in, right-of-way and utility groups and whoever to these discussions so they can be part of these conversations. And I mentioned yesterday the constructability review checklist, so I won't stay on this a lot, but it's just a tool for you to use. It's not required for sure, but it's something for you to just go through and, okay, are these issues present on my project? Okay, if they are, then maybe we would benefit from having a constructability review. And so I just mentioned that, the formal and the informal, when you're bringing people together. The risk assessment program, I mentioned this, and one of the things I forgot to mention yesterday, and I really wanted to, is in my mind, the reason I really wanted us to develop the RAW is because it is, again, documenting this risk. And it ties in with all of our programs, because as you're documenting these risks, then we can take this RAW into construction, and then we have our resident engineer who is still looking at this and saying, why did they make that decision? And then they can see it. We thought this was a risk. And then what we can also do is we can learn. We can learn in construction, okay, in design, you were like, here's a risk we think is present. Here's how we're gonna mitigate for it in our design. And then when we get into construction, we can come back to them, we can say, did it work? Was that a good idea? You know, what else did you do? Is that, you know, and then we keep capturing that, because if we keep doing the same bad ideas, then that's not, you know, and they keep getting changed, then we're not gonna have the best projects that we could certainly have. Or if we've got a really great idea on this project, then we wanna make sure that we're doing it on a lot of our projects. And so it's all of it. And so within our group, we try to really make sure that we're bringing everything back around and closing those loops. And so having everything documented is helpful to us, because we can continue to ask those questions and bring it back in. And we bring those risks, those great strategies back into our playbook that's coming out. And then we bring it back into Clear so that we can learn those lessons. Sorry, I'm just so passionate about closing our loops and having good projects. And so this is our link to our value management site. When you get to our value management site, it's everything. Like, it just lists all our programs. You click there, all of our stuff is in there. I want to mention to you, we also do value engineering proposals, and so, which Ben is here. Ben is overseeing that program. But value engineering proposals, if you're not familiar, are during construction. They are ideas that a contract has, and so we had value engineering proposals on our Asheboro Bypass project, on our Fayetteville Outer Loop project, our Dillsboro Bridge project, and you know, if you bring our office in, we help facilitate those discussions, and we bring that in. So a value engineering proposal is it's a contractor-driven idea, and they have an idea for a savings or, you know, something they want to do in the project. And then if it's realized, the department and the contractor split the savings 50-50. So on the Asheboro Bypass project, the VDP eliminated the Stutz Road overpass, which saved $1.5 million in construction cost and saved 12 different properties from being relocated. Okay. On the Fayetteville Outer Loop project, a wall's material and type due to the height change, and the length was also shortened due to constructability issues. This saved 2 months of challenging work. It saved on the cost and the reduced quantity size, and it was aesthetically more pleasing. The Dillsboro Road project eliminated the 483-foot temporary bridge and proposed closing the road. Now, due to the timing of this one, it works out because it was during 2020. And so the town was not in favor of closing the road at first, but then when 2020 hit, they were like, well, we're not going to have as much traffic. Everybody has to stay home. So they allowed it to happen, but then what they realized is it saved 2 years of contract time just by closing the road. But then it eliminated the detour bridge, and it saved like $1.5 million to the departments, and then 1.5 also to So some more lessons learned. I know I'm getting on time. Specific recurring project meetings. So for the US 421 I-40 business, we already talked about that. Salem Parkway had meetings every month. They just brought in all their stakeholders. They kept them in the loop and made sure that they understood, like, this is what's going on. This is where we are. This is our timeline. Because again, you know, they had agreed to let them close this whole road for this construction. So they were very invested. So having that level of transparency built that level of trust, so that as they made these decisions during construction, the municipality and the stakeholders trusted them in those decisions. The Dillsboro Bridge, as I mentioned, is also one that had specific recurring meetings. And so because they'd already built that level of trust with the town, making the recommendation again to close the road was agreed upon, because they trusted that DOT was making the best decision. And then the greatest thing that I want to bring up here is the Salem Parkway project is huge, and the Dillsboro Road, it was a bridge, you know, so much smaller project. So even having these recurring meetings is beneficial, you know, no matter what the size of your project. And then I wanted to mention that NT 42 is a project that was brought up into one of the PCAs that we had as a great collaborating. They had collaborative meetings with the project manager. So during construction, they realized that due to the complexity of this project, there were going to be construction revisions. And so they monthly, routinely they kept their project manager, who'd been part of the design, in the loop and had them as part of those meetings monthly. So when there were construction revisions, they were able to get those pushed through quickly because they already knew what was going on the project. And so speaking of the construction revisions, for the Fayetteville outer loop, we discussed it. And again, the lesson learned there would be to collaborate with your PMs for those construction revisions. And just to let you know, there is additional guidance for construction revisions in the PDN in stage 5. And we're going to be doing a construction revision lunch and learn. So we, as I mentioned, leaders about gathering information, but we also want to share that information. So what we've decided to do this year is we're doing lunch and learns. And so we're doing a construction revision lunch and learn. We're going to have project managers. We actually have, we just added from the workshop, division project manager, and we'll have central. We've got technical groups telling us kind of what they're looking for on construction revision plans. We're going to have IT there who's going to share a little bit of what they're developing to handle construction revisions. So this lunch and learn is open to industry partners, it's open to contractors, it's open to our residents, our divisions, it's open to our technical groups, it's everybody basically. And there will be PDHs available for our lunch and learns, we'll throw that out there. And so this one's coming, and then I'll share with you, these are some of our other ones. So February 9th, we have a bridge and stormwater runoff one. And then we're going to have a cost containment design feature, where we're going to look at particular ideas that are that you can utilize as you're doing your designs, just to go ahead and implement those features to reduce your cost. And then there's a value assessment. I don't know if any of you are familiar with value assessments, but we certainly did kick off value assessments last year as well. Our office was kind of managing that program. And so we're going to do a training, basically, lunch and learn for that, to kind of go through, because there's a lot of, we realize there's a lot of consultant groups now who've not been familiar with value engineering. And so value assessments kind of caught you off guard a little bit. And not that you haven't been doing a great job, but we wanted to be able to offer you a few more tools and some helps. And so there's going to be a lunch and learn for that on March 24th. And then, guidelines. All the groups have been asked to update their guidelines as part of IPD. And so our hydraulics group, and we might bring in some other people who've done it well, are going to share just maybe some best practices as far as like updating guidelines and how that goes. So anyway, if you have ideas for topics, please let us know. You can clear at ncdot.gov, super easy to remember. You can email that. If you go to this QR code, I think it'll take you to our project knowledge to your site probably, but you can sign up to be on the listserv for lunch and learns. And then what's going to happen is every time we have one, we'll just we'll add you to the invite. And then if you don't want to go, just decline it, but you'll automatically be invited to all of them if you sign up for that. Okay, so jump back in really quick. I just got a few more slides. The bridge stormwater runoff one that I just talked about, our hydraulics group is going to bring in, they're going to have conversation. We're also bringing in, construction, and they're going to have, conversation about, what's going on, the pressures to manage your cost, looking at new tools that can assist project managers and planners, hydraulic engineers, to looking at the drainage designs and the decisions. It's going to provide an overview of bridge stormwater runoff research, new tools, and design goals and best practices. So it's going to be a really good one. There's going to be case studies and all that. So again, this is our first one. And so if you're interested in attending, go back to that QR code and sign up, and we're going to be getting those invites out. So I mentioned all the PCAs. There's a website for PCAs. Again, if you go to the Project Knowledge Sharing site, you would click on, if you're an NCDOT person or you have an NCID, you can click on the login, and that'll just take you right into the site. If you're not, then you would need to scroll down the page and get an NCID. So it is not public sharing once you get in. You have to log in. But once you get in there, you can actually get to individual projects. And so we have all of our ones from last year. They're completed. You can go to our completed list. You can go, you can see our meeting minutes. You can see the recording, listen to the recording. There's pictures, there's documents. There's a lot of information that's really good in there. The minutes are really helpful because we have underlined and we list at the end each of the lessons learned that came from it. So it's really good information. And then our new ones that we have that are coming, we have a couple just already scheduled. Well, they're not exactly scheduled, but we know they're coming. They're on that list. And so as we get more, those will come. And then there's another way for you to be able to kind of sign up using a request form to be added to those different ones. And so just to know, we are creating a list of projects for PCAs. So if you know of any projects that are nearing the end of construction this year, or last year they ended in their construction, we would love to do a project and, post a PCA on them. So please let us know. We have, like I said, we have several from Division 6 that have been submitted. I think we have one from Division 2. And so, so we're going to be looking at those, but we'd love to get some from, across the state. So if you have ideas, we're interested in taking them. And again, PDH credits will be available for those in 2022. So, again, my name is Allison Hamer, and here's contact information. We have all the emails. So just pick one. I can get all of them. But anyway, if you have any questions, I can take them now in the last minute that I have. So, how long?
We got 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Anyone have any questions?
Does involvement in the constructability review program then preclude the contractors from bidding on the projects? And are they compensated for their time?
Thank you for saying that, because I had it on my slide, and totally forgot to say it. No. So participation, the question is, does participation in constructability reviews preclude contractors from being able to bid? And it does not. They can still bid on the projects, and the reason is because we are the third party. So a division or a project union, they wouldn't schedule their own, because if they chose contractors, it would look like they're paying favorites and picking contractors. But we are value management, and so we are third party, and we go to the AGC, or if it's specialty, then we will look for different contractors that might do that work, and we invite 2 to 3 different ones, or we go to the AGC and say, hey, put this out there, and then we'll take the first 3 or 4 that sign up. So we'll do that for, so then that keeps them from doing that. They are not compensated. It is voluntary. For them, it's also a learning experience. And so we typically do have good, attendance at those. Right.
Before I have any concern about the liability that might come out of lessons learned documentation.
So we met with our legal team when we were developing this, and we asked them those same questions. And it's the information that's shared is no different than probably what's already available in any other public documentation that people could get. But that is partly why the accepted list is only available to internal. I think that's part of the rub. And so we would want to share it, but I think the thought of making it open is why it's not. Yes?
With the CLEAR program, the lessons learned and the best practices are really what you're looking for. Have design standards or new details or anything been submitted to that as opposed to like Joe Holland's group? For those smaller pieces but are valuable to share.
Yeah, so yes and no, and this kind of goes back to you guys. So yeah, well, not exactly yes, but yes. So some ideas have come in that have changed design standards, or have been, some guideline stuff has come where it's like, okay, we need to probably make this change in our group. The hydraulics unit is actually moving forward to keep their guidelines updated. They're going to use the CLEAR program for people to do that, to submit any changes or any thoughts or any things that need to be included or ideas or whatever to the guidelines. They're going to utilize CLEAR to do that work because it's already set up for it to go to them, for them to review it. And so then it's also captured.
An easier system ready to go.
It is. It's already set up.
Thanks.
Now, I got a question on, you mentioned the tags, so are these groups meeting on a standard basis, or is it based on the ability to meet?
So some of them do have routine meetings, and so I think, and some of, well, and I will say, because not a lot of decisions are going to happen in one meeting, and so it's a lot of bringing, conversation and bringing that different. And so, like, some of the tags do meet, like, a routine, there's a standing meeting. So that one that I mentioned, the structures, they meet standard, like, just routine, and they're going over issues. And some of the issues they go over are not ones that even come into CLEAR, it's just ones they've heard of. And maybe it's something that we'll put into CLEAR once they've made that decision. But it's just, they've come together because they realize the benefit and everybody having that conversation. Another one that we just formed is like a resurfacing one. And again, it was one of our innovation coordinators. She does resurfacing contracts. And so we just did a kickoff for that. We're gonna kind of look at our game plan of what it's gonna look like to make a standard resurfacing, or help every division kind of be consistent across the state and give some tools to them. So that one we have not established yet as an ongoing. We have electric vehicle one that's waiting for funding. We were filling out an application for some different funding. And that's another thing that we can help with, is we'll try to look for ways to get stuff implemented. There's money out there from different organizations, and we can try to help find those means too. But, so yes and no.
One follow-up question is too, on post-construction reviews, if you're doing that, is that while it's still under warranty? Are you trying to do that within a 12-month warranty period, or does that matter?
Well, yeah, some of them actually we did were not even finished with construction. It had not even been accepted. So we have done PCAs on projects that are certainly still under warranty. Again, our contractors come, our designers, it's voluntary. They're not getting compensation for that. We make sure before they're invited that they realize that we're not talking contract issues. Like, we're not using these meetings to resolve any kind of claims or any kind of stuff that they have. Ideally, what we really want, and I think what we found in most of our projects, is we did them after claims were already settled. So we wanted to make sure that part was done, because we don't want to, again, we didn't want to turn those discussions into any of those types of things. We just want to talk about, what was happening during construction. We haven't run into any issues yet.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think you were trying to do any kind of settlement.
We're not, no, we're not trying to get them to come back and do work or anything like that.
Yeah, but I just didn't know whether you banging that thing and you're doing that, and if you don't do it before the project ends, I didn't know whether they could make a full assessment of what's still left to be done on the project versus the project completed.
Right. Well, they're not looking to change anything. It's really just we constructed this, and here's what we learned from it, and it's already been done.
Okay.
They came up with a solution at the time, and then there's a discussion about, could there be something different done in design so that we don't have to do this in the future, basically.
Allison, did you say the lessons learned, the published ones, that DOT employees would share those with other partners?
Yeah, I think so, absolutely. If there's something, and I will say, we're really hoping to make it automated. I mean, our feedback loop we're hoping to close is that when you get a project early on, and you're looking at it and you're like, okay, my project has XYZ features on it. I want to know if there's been any other lessons learned related to projects that are like mine. And so certainly now you can go in and you can search the database for XYZ features and see if anything pops up. But what we're hoping is we can make it automated through artificial, like an AI system. And so we did a research project and they've developed something. We've got to work with IT to see if we can get it implemented to be something that can just, you submit like your documents, your feasibility study and your PSR and all those things, you put those in there. It combs those for anything else that we have lesson learned and then spits those back out to you as, an automatic feature instead of you. That's the hope. That's where we're trying to get to. Again, I don't IT. I don't know. It sounds super complicated to me, but I don't know. Great. Any other questions? Thank you guys so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
On your way out, you can pick your deviation. And, you guys